Welcome back to The Power Shift, a podcast about urban energy policy and climate action. My name is Grace.
And I'm Blake, and this week we'll be interviewing Don Lynott, who will be talking about his firsthand experience of energy policy while living in DC.
So, thank you for joining me, Don. Would you like to give a little introduction about yourself?
Sure. My name is Don Lynott. I live in Washington, D.C., and I am a construction manager.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So, in DC, do you think of DC as a sustainable city? Do you think it's sustainable?
Um, I think that there is a fair amount of green space and parks. It's a very congested city, so there is a lot of traffic.
I don't know how often you actually go into the city, but have you noticed any physical changes in the city's energy
Oh
infrastructure?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's been quite a bit, and it's so during COVID. um, DC and surrounding suburban cities took the opportunity to create a lot of bike lanes, take 3-lane roads that were going in and out of the city, and make one of those lanes a bike lane. Also creating more bus lanes in the city to push the use of mass transit. The buses, I think, now all run off of, and I may be wrong on this, but it's some kind of propane. It's a natural gas. It's not, they're not filling up with fuel. Um, and so there's been a really big push for people to ride their bikes to work, for people to take busing. There's been a huge infrastructure push for electric vehicles. So there are a lot of charging stations downtown, where parking spaces used to be for kind of anybody. Now they're designated charging station parking lots. Um, some of the cons to that, though, Grace, is the because there's so much car traffic, and they did this during COVID where there wasn't any traffic, or traffic was significantly reduced and almost non-existent. The problem with the DC area is everything it's sprawled out. A lot of people commute into the city, and when they took away lanes of traffic, it created more congestion for the cars going into the city and out of the city. And I can't imagine. I think our traffic has increased significantly um, in and around the city because of those lane shutdowns and those changes. And so you have cars, sitting longer, idling longer, in the city proper. So there's probably a lot more emissions that are going on right now, than they probably anticipated, and getting released. Y- I think the push for mass transit. I don't think the subway gets used as much as it should. I do think they've tried to make some pushes to make the buses cleaner, and allow people to get on the buses and use the buses. They're fairly crowded, especially in the suburbs too. The buses get around. I think they offer a lot of free bus rides to generate people's attention, and maybe get people to ride them a little bit more. Um, so we see, those are the main things we see. We also saw, because of COVID and coming out of COVID, a lot of people would gather outside. A lot of outdoor spaces was created. So a lot of streets have been shut down and turned into more walking alleys um, between restaurants and shopping spaces and pubs and bars and things like that. There's been a lot of streets that basically been closed off and turned into like almost like a mall, a walking mall, if you will. So there's been some really positive stuff there, but I do believe that there's been a little bit of negative impact to things as well. But I think those are the kinds of things they've done from a sustainability standpoint. So I was talking to a building engineer late last week
Hmm.
who operates the government, like a large government facility. It's about 1 million square foot building, and the building is basically shutting all of the heating and cooling systems down every night around 8 o'clock. And this gentleman's job was to come in every morning at 2 in the morning and start everything back up so that the building was warm or cool when everyone got in at 8. So, the city's actually, some of the government facilities are literally shutting down all their systems completely at night.
Um,
Yeah.
have you worked on any projects or buildings or like the data centers situation inside of DC? And have you had to work around any sort of legislation regarding like energy use? Or that might not be anything you deal with, but
So, from the data centers, the majority of the large data centers that you read about in the papers and see on the news,
mhm,
they are really
okay.
outside of the city. So they're in Northern Virginia. Of like, I think we're up to 664 in Northern Virginia right now. So from that aspect, we don't, we because of my job, I do get engaged in having to go to various town meetings where there's opposition to the data centers, and what they're, people not wanting them in their backyard, talking about energy usage, talking about the cost of power going up and things like that in their communities. There are different kinds. There's crypto data centers, crypto mining data centers, and those are real energy hogs. They use a ton of water. They're very loud. They often run their backup generators more often than a cloud or an AI data center. The cloud and AI data centers, depending on how they're designed, um, some of them you fill the system once with water, and yes, it's probably a few million gallons of water, but you fill it once and that's it. It's called a closed loop system, so you'll never have to make it up. You'll never have to. There's no evaporation or anything like that.
Huh.
There are some designs that have what they call cooling towers, and those are kind of like what you would see. You've probably seen them. They have a plume of mist going
Yeah,
up, and that's the water evaporating off of the cooling tower.
yeah,
um, those systems do make up water a lot more. However, those systems also use less power, and they also on the data side, it's still a closed loop system. So you're only evaporating the water that is used to cool the evaporator side of the chiller. So it's not as much as you would think. There is definitely some trade-off that the data centers do some good things, and each one that we tend to build, everyone's trying to get more sustainable, and trying to do the right thing, trying to get close to a net zero data center, and drive the energy costs down. Not only, I mean, primarily client driven, but not but also environmental driven too. So, will they get better? I think they're gonna try. I just don't know, Grace, if they're really gonna, how much we're gonna see, um, really what kind of an impact it's gonna make. They're they're
yeah.
they're building so many of them across the country.
Well, that was a great interview. Thanks again, Don, for coming onto the show. We really appreciated hearing about your insight regarding the changing environment in DC as well as data centers.
Thank you for tuning into our podcast. I'm Grace.
And I'm Blake.
And this is The Power Shift, a podcast about urban energy policy and climate action. Welcome back to The Power Shift, a podcast about urban energy policy and climate action. My name is Grace.
And I'm Blake, and this week we'll be interviewing Don Lynott, who will be talking about his first-hand experience of energy policy while living in DC.